Audio unleashed.
Bam. That means that's the excitement level ramping up quickly. Bam.
Yeah.
Like Emerald. We have a lot to learn from people like that.
Doesn't sound very excited. Sounds like your heart's kind of half in it.
This is, Dennis, this is the most, I'm not lying here. This is the most excited I've been about the audio
Unleashed
podcast in a long time, because I just found so many topics that were worthy of discussing. And this without even talking about the recent Expona show, which we largely ignored, but because we don't go to shows and anyway. I will say, can I just say, I'm really notorious for trashing the Absolute Sound, but they did a really good show report that I would recommend people check out.
Oh, very cool. And back in the day, we would have dug into that for our third segment. But they
don't talk about testing and stuff like that. They just talk about like, hey, we saw this product and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it was really good. We'll put a link into it.
Okay.
we got to throw them a bone once in a while, man.
Yeah. Anyway, what are we going to talk about this week, man?
We're going to start with an article I found on Stereophile.com titled "Chips Are Still for Chumps." This is by the editor-in-chief, Jim Austin. It's kind of a broad-ranging discussion about, the hi-fi tweaks and scientific stuff. And, this guy apparently has a PhD in physics. And this column started out like, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, good, solid stuff. He's willing to say there's things in audio that, that are marketed as improvements that actually don't work. But then he just runs very quickly off the rails and starts to sound like, like an evolution denier or something. I mean, he just goes like way out there. And I'm like, what? And it's actually the premise of this article, this blog, or this, whatever this thing is, column, is he's looking back at a column he did like 20 years ago and seeing like, how have I changed since I became, editor in chief? And it's like, dude, to the critical reader, it is kind of obvious how you have changed, because the original column was great. And this one's like, okay, science, but let's just make apologies for everybody in the audio industry and all audiophiles who reject science. Let's give them some space too, huh?
Yeah.
So we're gonna dig into that a little bit deeper and have some fun with it, and then we're gonna segue gracefully into.
Well, we're going to segue gracefully into this is a bit of a departure for us. Normally, we sort of like find an article or a video we like and throw it on the idea board. Hey, do you want to discuss? This time, we just got a pile of links, and they're all from AliExpress. And you were the one who put most of these links in there. And basically, the premise that you sort of pitched me was like, I'm getting a lot of online ads for cheap, well-made audio gear on AliExpress. I started looking at some of these, and I was like, yeah, we've got something to talk about here, but it's more than just the presence of affordable electronics on AliExpress. It's like, okay, what does all of this mean in the era of our current trade war? And I've got some examples of stuff that I also found on Reddit that point in the direction of not too good. But I think we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna dig into it. We're gonna dig into the implications. But we're also gonna talk about just like what some of these products are, because some of it is, what would you say, loving homage to classic audio gear.
It disappeared in Stereophile and cost $10,000. You'd be kind of like, okay, fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet it's like $500.
Yep. For now, maybe.
Well, we'll be discussing that.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about after that?
Then we're going to, I found an article on Soundstage Access, which is one of the innumerable Soundstage micro sites that make up the Soundstage universe.
Oh, Doug's going to not be happy with that. It's the Soundstage Network.
So anyway, it's by Dennis Berger, who best known as one half of the Audio
Unleashed
podcast. And I was intrigued and delighted by this article. So I thought, we never talk about stuff you write. So let's talk about something you wrote. And the article's titled, "Nobody Warned Me Vinyl Would Turn into a DIY Hobby." I was reading this. I'm like, oh, yeah, God, everybody's been through all of this stuff. And actually, there's a tweak in here that I did not even know about that is really useful in my 5 decades of playing vinyl. I never knew about. So
interesting.
There's some. This is like the stuff that this is a great article for people that are transitioning into vinyl and talking about the things they need to think about and things that you don't really see talked about in audio publications. So I thought it was really cool.
Okay, cool. Being a newbie to all of this, I guess, has its advantages.
Yeah. And then we have a Patreon segment, which is about what?
We're going to be talking about the Triangle Audio Borea BR04 on some of the buzz that it's getting, including the fact that there's still some unknown quantities here. But we'll dig into that. We figure, hey, these are passive speakers. Probably going to be more interesting to people who would, subscribe to the Patreon of a podcast like this. I don't think most normies are really turned on by passive speakers anymore. Maybe they should be, but they're not. So it's going to be a patron segment.
Yeah. So let's start with this Stereophile article. And I kind of dumped it in at the last minute into our vision board, and you were glommed onto it immediately. I probably should have known that you would, but why did you glom onto this so quickly? What was it that shall I say attracted you to this article?
I think it's really just the contrast between what he wrote 20 years ago and what he's writing today. And I think, a less charitable interpretation of this would be to say, well, now that Jim is the editor of Stereophile and has to play nice with advertisers, maybe that has influenced his worldview a little bit. I think that would be one interpretation of it. I think the kids these days would say the old article was based and the new article is cringe, but it just shows like, the old article he was talking about like John Atkinson about this pizza box tripod and how John was at a show and they put the thing on a CD player and the person who was doing the demonstration managed to convince everybody in the audience that it actually sounded better when they put the pizza tripod on top of the CD player. Yeah. And then he goes on to like talk about this chip thing that he heard and he deconstructs it really, really well. Well, now he's returning to that. And I guess because they're not an advertiser, he's like, yeah, that's still crap. It's not, not every tweak does something. But after that, there's a lot of apologetics for spooky woo-woo here. And a lot of language that is, in my opinion, a dog whistle for the anti-science crowd. He never comes out. And in fact, he's like science is great. I love science. That's the words of what he's saying. But the implications of what he's saying are, well, if you don't believe science, then, your viewpoints are perfectly valid as long as you're spending money on our advertisers. I mean, am I being uncharitable, or do you think that's a fair assessment of what he's getting at here?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been editor-in-chief of 3 publications. And one thing I think people, I'm less, well, hell, I was about to say I'm a little bit less knowledgeable about the real business side of the internet stuff, but there ain't even that much of the internet stuff left. So, but I'm not sure there is a business side to that anymore. But on the standard magazine publishing side, I was an editor-in-chief of 2 print magazines. And people don't realize, I think, a lot that the editor-in-chief's job, at least of an enthusiast publication like this, I'm not talking about People magazine or something. a lot of the editor, the editor works in concert with the publisher, who is, basically the head salesperson, or the you could say the business manager. And the editor works in concert to, or at least I always did, and I think most of them do. I've known a lot, with the publisher to build a viable business. Okay. So, the editor has to find an audience and also have find advertisers that want to reach that audience, and walk a fine line between not enraging those advertisers too much. There's a couple that you're going to probably get rid of because maybe some guy makes some bogus thing and he just demands that you give it a good review, and you finally got to say no, right?
Yeah.
If you have integrity, there are some editors who will just say, yeah, okay, fine, we'll give it a good review. But, the editors of Stereophile are absolutely not like that, in my opinion. I was not like that. It really is a business job as much as it is playing around with words, right?
Yeah.
So Jim's in that job now. I don't know. I shouldn't say Jim. Mr. Austin. I've never met him.
I've never seen
him. I've never seen him. But then again, you and I don't go to audio shows anymore. So,
yeah.
And, I'm with Wirecutter, so I can't go to lavish, manufacturer dinners at shows. So, and that's where I met most of my press friends and my press enemies as well. But it's very interesting because I started reading this, and, Jim Austin, I think, does walk a fine line between the sort of the engineering, scientific, rational side and the BS side, right? And John Atkinson did that too. A lot of times I read his stuff, I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, this is fine. I'm glad this guy's around. And I was reading this column, I'm kind of like, yeah. I read this one paragraph. Persuasion powers aside, talking about that pizza tripod demo.
Right.
That's the little plastic tripod that goes in a pizza box so it doesn't get mashed. Persuasion powers aside, I've had similar experiences, not with pizza box tripods, but with any number of real system changes at home with my hi-fi. Some changes hold up. Some disappear. Others remain audible, but ultimately don't matter. I'm like, that's good. That's a good rational statement, right?
Sure.
And then he goes into the problem, he's talking about this intelligent chip thing he's talking about. The problem is not that it has no apparent mechanism of action, it's that there is no plausible mechanism of action. Bam, man. This is audio unleashed stuff right here. We could have him on the podcast talking about this stuff. Except... Except, we go down a little further.
Yeah, can I pick up the paragraph that really offended me? I mean, and it starts with
court,
just
pal.
The most absurd statement I've read in Stereophile in a long time.
Hit it.
He goes off the rails with the first 4 words. Scientific certainty is great. Look, scientific certainty, those 2 words together are nonsense. As you and I have said many, many, many times before, uncertainty is the language of science, right?
Yeah.
Every scientific paper that I've ever read basically includes a figure that is like, here is the level of uncertainty that we have here, right? And the less uncertainty, the better. But there is always that function of how uncertain are we? And if you don't have that in your research, then your research is not worth anything. So to say scientific certainty is great, Jim, as a scientist, when he wrote those words, he knew what he was doing, and he was not doing good things. I'm sorry. But he goes on.
Just above that, he does say the familiar state for Stereophile reviewers is to be confident but not certain.
Right.
So,
but he's not talking about science there, right? He's trying to conflate science with a sort of arrogant certainty. So he goes on, scientific certainty is great, but it's expensive, and some problems, such as the ability of a component to provide musical satisfaction, are, if not intractable, then at least poorly suited to a scientific approach. Well, tell that to Floyd Toole, right? I mean, everything that we talk about with regard to measurements, and that's true of loudspeaker measurements or electronic measurements, are us grappling with, okay, has this been studied, and can we say that people are more likely to like one thing or another? When you look at, let's take our friend Aaron Hardison of Aaron's Audio Corner. Like when he looks at, speaker measurements, what he is looking at is like, how does that conform to a performance level that most people will either like or dislike? And that's not to say that if most people like a speaker and you dislike it, that you're wrong, right? Or vice versa. Of course, there is always room for personal preference, like we said before. But all of these measurements boil down to us trying to figure out how do they correlate with listener preference. And I'm sorry, but Jim knows that, right? So when he says that the ability of a component to provide musical satisfaction is poorly suited to a scientific approach, what did Floyd Toole spend his life doing? What is Sean Olive spending his life doing? It's utter nonsense. Even if it hadn't fallen apart by this point with that paragraph, this whole article fell apart, in my opinion.
You have found the sentence that is really the crux of this, because I had a different problem with this sentence. And that's with the phrase, such as the ability of a component to provide musical satisfaction. What the hell does that mean?
Well, I think it just means, do you like it? Doesn't it?
Right. It's consumer satisfaction. That is the intangible thing. We know about musical satisfaction. You know, the Harman guys figured that out, right? Among other scientists. But that's basically been figured out, right? We know that the amplifier, barring something that really sucks, is not key to musical satisfaction, right? We know that the speaker is. But, you know, we can take a look at, say, a Zoo Audio speaker, which has, you know, wildly bizarre frequency response. And I don't want to pick on them. All of the full range speaker guys have that problem, right? It's insurmountable. And those are not providing musical satisfaction because they're not providing accurate, faithful, whatever you want to call it, musical reproduction. But they are providing consumer satisfaction. The people that buy things like Zoo Audio like them because they're cool. Okay. It's consumer satisfaction. And that's what we can't predict. I can't tell you what's a portable Bluetooth speaker you're going to absolutely love. I can take a guess, but maybe you don't like the looks of this one. And, you know, I was just talking to a Wirecutter editor this morning and she bought, you know, one of the really cheap Bluetooth speakers for her son. Like, I'm assuming she bought like one of the little Tribbit ones for $28 or whatever, right? And her son hated it, and he bought the JBL that we recommended in there for like $50 with his own money. He's like 15 years old. And it's kind of like, the JBL does not sound better than the $28 Tribbit. I know, I have them both. I've tested them with panels and stuff. But it says JBL on it, and it kind of looks cooler. And that's what it's all about. See, that's what we can't predict because the formula for consumer satisfaction varies from individual to individual, and it changes over time with different individuals. The example being, what's the right guitar for you this year? You know, what's it going to be next year? It's set. What's the right T-shirt for you this year? What's it going to be 3 years down the road? I don't know. Right. And no subjective or objective test of T-shirts is going to tell you that. Just as no scientific testing can tell you exactly what audio component's going to float your boat. It can tell you what's going to provide musical satisfaction. In other words, a faithful music reproduction. But this whole thing of like, you know, musical satisfaction, it just sounds so kind of lofty. You know, these kind of phrases are always, I always think that the more people toss around these kind of phrases, the more they make it apparent that they really don't understand music very well.
Or science, interestingly enough.
In this case, I'm sure he does. But, you know, that's one of the problems that you faced as a magazine editor is the big money was in cable ads. You could get, you know, 20% of your ads could be cable. Did any of those cables make a difference? I mean, not really. How many ads are there in Stereophile for some amp company claiming they have the be-all and end-all amp that delivers, you know, musical satisfaction? It's a whole bunch of BS. And there's nothing wrong with, again, as we keep saying, there's nothing wrong. Well, there is something wrong with a lot of these products, but, you know, any well-engineered product that's not from some just nutty garage company is probably fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you want to spend $8,000 on an amp that's got tons of aluminum all around it that looks really cool, that's awesome. And if you want to go spend $1,000 on a Parasound, that's awesome too. You know, whatever, man. It's consumer satisfaction. You're a consumer. We can tell you what what's going to give you faithful reproduction of music. And Stereophile, honestly, I think usually does a pretty good job of that, right? That what they do a poor job of is distinguishing between the Parasound amp and the, Boulder or D'Agostino amp, because the reviews are almost interchangeable. And every single time, it's like they compare the cheap amp to the expensive amp. And it's like, well, the cheap amp was like, it wasn't the equal of the expensive amp, but it was surprisingly good.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, we should encourage people to read both of these articles, by the way. Don't just read the new one. Read them both. Read them back to back. And I don't know. Maybe you will think that Jim's attitudes have improved over the years. Maybe you think he's in a better place 20 years later. But I think you and I, Brent, would agree. There's been a bit of what's the opposite of evolution? De-evolution, devolve, whatever. Yeah,
de-evolution, man.
Yeah,
Devo. Right. So I'm not even condemning Jim here, because I've been through all this stuff too. Everybody who's edited one of these, again, I'm not a website expert, but everybody who's edited a magazine has been through these same questions. And, you got to make a living, and you got to, all the magazines I worked for ran lots of cable ads. And
anyway, I don't think I have anything more to say about this one. You got any other nuggets of wisdom to add, or chip still for chumps?
If you like the chip, buy it. I don't care.
Yeah.
This is some chip thing that you put on top of a CD player. That was the whole point of the article, which we entirely missed.
Yeah.
Maybe we're the chumps, Dennis.
Maybe we are the chumps.
Anyway, at least you got to give credit to Stereophile for examining these issues a little bit,
Oh, okay. Sure.
Can you?
Yeah.
At least they're talking about it. At least they're not saying, "Oh, trust your ears."
That's a good point. That's a very good point. All right. Anyway.
Well, they are kind of saying trust your ears, though. So whatever.
Kind of. They just run a little bit of look. He kind of wants to. He kind of wants to play both sides here. He kind of wants to play both sides of the fence, and I
exactly.
You can't. Either science works or it doesn't. So. Yeah. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll get some water, and then we'll come back and talk about AliExpress. And welcome back to Audio
Unleashed. Yeah.
Did you blow your vocal cords out on that one? You need to take it easy, man. You're sick. You don't need to be doing the theatrics with your voice.
I'm too excited. Let's talk about some Chinese audio.
That's what we're going to talk about this segment. So this started, as I said in the intro, with a bunch of links that you threw into the idea board of just really affordable stuff on AliExpress, like hi-fi stuff. Some of it is, just sort of high-end tube preamps. Some of it is, I would say, homages to classic stuff. Like you put a link in here to this, what is it called? Bringing up the link now. This 1-to-1 clone AccuPhase E406 by Soundmaker. Yeah, it's just a clone of an AccuPhase amp for $500. Now, as you pointed out, shipping on that one is $203. So, shipping is pricey on this stuff if you're buying the big stuff. This is not buying a little fussy amp or anything like that. But quite a bit of gear. But yeah, I mean, normally, like I said in the intro, we have like stories that we're going to riff off of. And in this case, there wasn't a story, but in a roundabout way, I found a story that we can apply to this, because one of the things that, I mean, I don't think is intuitively obvious to a lot of people. Although, look, tariffs are on the forefront of everybody's mind right now because of all of this trade war chaos. But I don't think a lot of people really understand how tariffs work, because there's been a lot of obfuscation about how tariffs work. There have been a lot of outright lies about how tariffs work. But I wanted to point to, I'm going to put this in the show notes. This is a story of a guy on Reddit in the audiophile subreddit who bought a mini DSP Flex HTX. Anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's basically a room correction box that you can add to your system. Mini DSP makes a bunch of different boxes where you can like plug the output of your preamp into this thing, and then this thing goes out into your amp, and it allows you to do Dirac room correction even if your system doesn't otherwise support it. So this guy bought a $999 mini DSP Flex HTX. Then the tariffs hit, and all of a sudden he's getting a bill from DHL for $1,494.93. Now, that is not the total cost.
Yeah.
That is just the import duty, right? That is what this guy has got to pay before DHL is going to deliver his $999 amp. So all of a sudden, $1,000, not amp, component, sorry. All of a sudden, this $1,000 component is $2,500. And this guy's like, I don't know what to do, man. So he's declining the shipment. DHL is going to ship it back to Mini DSP. Is he going to get his money back? Well, maybe not. We haven't reached that point in the story yet, but he's certainly hoping that by declining the shipment, Mini DSP will just refund him the price of purchase. But, a lot of people in the AliExpress subreddit are kind of like surprised these days that prices on AliExpress aren't going up. Like, look, I can order this for this. And people are having to explain to them, dummy, the tariffs aren't paid by China, right? The tariffs are paid by you. This is a tax on you for importing this thing. So you go buy any of these products from AliExpress, this $500, Soundmaker clone. Okay, what are the import duties going to be when it gets to your house? I don't know. What day of the week is it?
They don't know when they put it on the boat what the duties are going to be by the time the boat lands.
And it doesn't matter to them because they're not going to pay it. You are.
So I wanted to talk about the product a little bit.
Okay.
Because that's what drew me to this page. I think I saw this on Facebook or something, like a Facebook ad for AliExpress. And I was like, they'll either say it's like a Conrad Johnson or it's based on a Conrad Johnson. And Conrad Johnson, for those who don't know, I don't know if they still exist, but it was a brand that was very prominent in the 90s. And with tube gear, kind of like Audio Research. It was kind of the alternative to Audio Research. And the stuff was well made. I had a Conrad Johnson PV2A preamp, and it was a nice preamp. I want to say it had a phono stage, and it had I think it had 6 tubes. So they're supposedly, it's based on a Conrad Johnson PV12 circuit. And I look at this thing, and it looks like a Conrad Johnson preamp. It's got an actual transformer. It's not like one of these things where, it's like supposedly a high-end audio product, and you look at the inside, and there's nothing in it because it's all Class D. This is made very much like my Conrad Johnson PV2A was, and it was a nice preamp. I should never have gotten rid of it. The difference is this one only has 2 tubes in it. Mine had 6. So I don't know. It doesn't have a phono stage, so that cuts out a couple tubes right there.
Oh, yeah.
But it does have transformers. It's got DC blocking caps, so it's running single-ended. It's got like high-quality jacks on it, apparently pretty high-quality pots. The front of it, it looks kind of Conrad Johnson-ish. It's got a real simple, minimalist front end. What's the brand name on it? Trans Audio. Fine, but it looks like a high-end audio component. Like if you saw this in a rack at the Exponent show, you wouldn't even blink.
Yeah.
And it's $270. Now the shipping is $120, but still for $400, you're getting what's obviously a pretty high quality tube preamp. And I don't know the legality of saying, it's based on a Conrad Johnson, whatever circuit. I know in China, nobody cares, but in the US, the intellectual property laws are a lot different and practices are a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if there's much left of Comrade Johnson to complain, but, this looks like it's probably an okay product.
But here's the thing, does the equation of okay, this thing is $270 right now. Shipping is $120, but then what happens if, you order it and then DHL says, okay, pay us $400 or whatever the number is today if you want us to deliver it to you. And you don't know what that number is going to be until it is processed through customs, because it's not the day you bought it. It's the day it processes through customs. That's when they decide what this magic tax you're going to have to pay is. So, I mean,
you'd be insane to buy this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it just doesn't, when the price can triple or whatever, the price is going up this hour.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny, they're referencing Carry Audio, they're referencing AccuPhase, Comrade Johnson, Dart Zeal, which is a little bit newer of a brand, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least it's more recently come to my attention. This amp does not look anything like a Dart Zeal amp that I've seen, because those are the really super exotic, $40,000 amps that like Michael Fremer reviews. But you look at this thing and it looks more like the brands I kind of grew up with in the 90s, like B&K Components that used to be in Buffalo. They're gone now. But they made really good amps that were affordable. This looks like maybe this could be a Parasound product, this thing. And it's 400, it's supposedly a Dart Zeal circuit. It's 150 watts times 2, solid state, toroidal transformer. It's got a big honking power supply caps in it. So it's got a lot of storage. It looks like if you pop the lid on this, you'd say, this is a Parasound product or some very reputable brand. And it's $407.18. Plus the shipping is $170.46. So you're into about $570.
Yeah.
For a 2 times 150 watt amp, which is pretty good. But although, you assume it's going to work okay, what's the return policy? Well, good luck, pal. And I'm sure you'd have to pay return shipping if there is even a return policy on it. But then, of course, you run into the tariff problem, and this thing could very rapidly cost you a lot more than an equivalent Parasound that you can just go buy at some dealer or go buy off of a Crutchfield or something, with free shipping. I think they have free shipping. But so I was so intrigued by this, and I really wanted to, if I was still doing high-end audio, really, I would probably buy one of these 2 preamps and run measurements on it and test it. Before this tariff stuff, I would have bought it. Nowadays, there's no way I would have, because I spend $300 or something on this preamp and $100 something on shipping, and then it gets here and all of a sudden it's $1,200, $1,500, whatever dollars, and what am I going to do? I'm not going to get my money back probably from whoever this is. Funkenya is apparently the company on this. This is also Trans Audio, but it says Funkenya on the picture.
Right.
God knows. But I really would love to test one of these and see if this is like a viable product, because it probably is, except, because of the trade issues, we may not find out. There were a couple of, so-called chi-fi brands, and that's kind of a derogatory term, except the brands seem to have embraced it.
Right.
So fine. But I actually did buy, I don't even remember the brand. It was a really good headphone amp, and I saw this thing. It was made in China, or GD Audio. And I looked at this thing, and I'm like, God, this is a beautifully made headphone amp. And it was something like $500. It was all relays. The volume controls were done with relays, which is the best way to do it. No potentiometer, relays, and 1% resistors all the way through. It was just beautiful. It's a beautiful product, and it sounded really good. But it was the equivalent of a $2,000, $3,000 American-made product.
Nice.
And it was quite good. And they had similar DACs that actually had like over-the-top build quality, and they were a quarter of the price of what you'd pay here, for an American or European brand. And it was great. And, there's a lot of brands like, say, Topping and SMSL, which have come into the U.S. and done DACs, headphone amps, things like that, for very reasonable prices. And they're great. But again, you can order it off Amazon. and you know what the price is going to be. Whereas a lot of this stuff comes shipped straight from China.
Yeah.
And they had an exemption going that was everything under, I think, $600. Is that right? Or was it $800? I can't remember. Maybe it was $800. Everything under $800 came in. It was an individual shipment, came in duty free.
Right.
And they have supposedly rescinded that, except it's by executive order, and it's questionable whether or not it's binding. And of course, from what I've read, the people at customs are just scrambling to figure out what to even do.
Yeah. And also there's the fact that prices are just, look, these people that run these businesses, especially these importing businesses and the retailers that are selling imported products, they're not the ones who are going to pay the cost of all of this. They're going to pass that along. And I have discovered it's weird. It hasn't, as far as I've seen, hit electronics yet. May just be because it's less of a mainstream thing. But I'm a knitter, and a couple of weeks ago, Bethany and I decided, look, things are about to get really, really, really bad, really, really awful. We're going to buy ourselves one last luxury good, and then we're going to hunker down. And the thing I wanted to buy was a good set of circular knitting needles, interchangeables. It's been trying to figure out what I can buy. It's a moving target on a day-to-day basis. I eventually settled on this set. It was $135, right? Ordered it. They shipped me the wrong thing. Prices went up overnight. And instead of shipping me the $135 set that I ordered, they shipped me what was today $135 set, which was the day before a $69 set, right? And now the $135 set is a $210 set. Here's the thing.
Oh boy.
They're not made in China. They're made in India, right? And another set that I was looking at is made in Nepal. And so it is simply just the fact that basically somebody did the calculations on the knitting subreddit. In the matter of 2 weeks, everything knitting related has gone up 40% in price. And it doesn't matter where it's made, doesn't matter where it's coming from. Everything is 40% more expensive. That's what we're facing. So
even if it's made on the Penguin Island.
Even if it's made on the Penguin Island, it's 40% more expensive now. Yeah. And those prices aren't coming down. And when I was going through all of this was in the, are the tariffs everything? Are they not? And it's funny, prices, since it has stabilized and we've got this 90-day pause, prices have come down a little bit, but nowhere near back to where they were. What was 135 went up to 210 and has come down to 170. And that is just where it's staying now. That's what it costs. So I'm wondering, when is this going to hit the electronics market, the audio market? I don't know. I just think everything's going to get more expensive.
I keep wondering because, people like Samsung are contacting me going hey, you want to try our new soundbar? Kind of I don't know what it costs. Yeah. Do you know what it costs?
Moreover, do you know what it's going to cost next week?
I should say, if you're buying from, Amazon or you're buying from Best Buy or something, right? Then you don't have to worry about the price going up. When you buy it at that price, that means they have it here and they're going to get it, I assume.
Yeah.
But what, if Samsung is just now shipping these bars from China, the price could go up in between. If the boat leaves the dock today, well, I think we know what the tariffs are at the moment, except it's just constantly changing. By the time the things get here to me, the prices may have changed.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I've actually worried, what's this going to mean? I mean, of course, we're reviewers, so we only think of ourselves. And what's it going to mean for the reviewing business? If we can't say, a couple months ago, we could say, hey, you can go buy this Samsung or LG or whatever soundbar for $1,200 and it's awesome. And now, when I'm reviewing soundbars this spring, I'm going to say okay, you can buy this sound bar for this and it's awesome, but then the price might just fluctuate like crazy and maybe people don't buy anymore. And it's hard to make a recommendation when you don't know what the price is going to be.
I was talking to Doug Schneider about this the other day. Doug Schneider, the founder of Soundstage. And one of the things he has recommended is like, when you're writing your articles, like, look, it'll have the publication date on it. He's like, I also want you to put in the copy, like, what day are you writing this on? That's where we are. Like,
wow. Yeah.
You know, because in the 2 weeks that passes between, you know, this thing leaving my fingers and going through copy editing and layout and all of that, it's people are going to think I'm crazy, you know, if they read the date and the date says May 1st, you know, and I'm writing about a world that doesn't even exist anymore. He was like, you need to start telling people what day am I actually writing this, because it's relevant. So scary.
I so much wish I could check out some of these products though, because the Berlin Sound Fever Grade integrated amplifier. I mean, how intriguing is that? And it's got like, it looks like it's made by Boulder. It's got those drilled, you know, Venturi style heat sinks, which, you know, I think D'Agostino pioneered. And this thing looks absolutely beautiful. Like, it looks like it would cost $8,000. It's $182 plus $120 shipping. But still, $3,000 or $300 for a Fever Grade hi-fi amplifier. How many Fever Grade amplifiers were there at Expona?
I don't know. That's
not
a good
too
question.
many, I'll bet.
Probably not too many.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Hey, we're back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we are here to talk about Dennis's favorite audio writer, and that would be Dennis.
I think I'm like my least favorite audio writer. So you gotta factor in the whole self-loathing thing, man.
I normally don't read Soundstage that much because it's broken into like all these micro sites that I have to navigate, and it's a giant pain. And I can't just go look at it every few days and see what's up the way I can with Darko or Stereophile or something. But whatever. So I did find this article. I was like, wow, nobody really talks about this, but everybody who's into vinyl has been through this. So what was it that you went through here? Because you're a recent vinyl convert.
I am a recent vinyl convert.
So talk to me. What did you go through here? What was your journey?
You know, it really started with a stupid dust cover. No, I think I've made the comment before here. Like, for me, where I'm finding my love of vinyl is in the ceremony of it all, which is not revelatory for anybody. There are a lot of people who are like, I just like the act, I like the aesthetic, whatever. And for me, that's my jam. I really love just taking a record that I love and putting it on my record player and, you know, putting the anti-static brush over it and dropping the needle, the whole process. It's like tea ceremony for music, you know? But the dust cover on my record player, this beautiful record player, this beautiful U-turn theory record player is just marred by this awful, awful dust cover. And I think anything made of it acrylic is just awful. But I don't know. My dust in my house must be made out of diamonds or something, because I just cannot keep this dust cover from getting all scratched up, and I hate it. And for the longest time, I was like, am I just going to have to buy a new dust cover for this thing every year? And then somebody on Reddit suggested just like, dude, just get it like a golf cart polishing kit. And I was like, wait, what? And so I tried it, and I actually a couple of times now I've polished my dust cover. The most recent time, the pictures that I've got for the story, not the best results because my battery ran out during the third step. So there's like three different buffers and three different compounds. One of them for large scratches, one for medium, one for the light scratches, the fine scratches, which almost sort of read more as like a haze than scratch. But I got through the first two steps and it's like good enough, you know. You can kind of only see the scratches in a raking light. But normally I'd go through all 3 steps and end up with a brand new looking, you know, dust cover for at least 3 months until it's trashed again for reasons that are just completely beyond me. But anyway, it's just sort of like, it sort of kickstarted a whole DIY thing for me. And another thing I talk about in the story is like I think most people who get into vinyl for the first time, I ended up picking up like an IKEA Calyx shelf, which is perfectly sized and everything, but there's no back on the thing. So I ordered these like stoppers, these back stoppers from a company called Turntable Revival, and they're great for providing something that like, you know, functions like a back, but it took like 6 months for the things to get here. And I added another shelf, but I'm like, well, I need more of these things, but I'm not going to wait 6 more months. And I had just gone through the process of buffing out my dust cover. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to make my own and made them out of foam core board and sticky tape, and they work perfectly. In fact, they're a little thicker than the ones from Turntable Revival. They blend better with the case. I don't know. I'm just finding, for whatever reason, I've never been a tinkerer with regard to audio. I'm not one of these people who's constantly looking for my next upgrade. I'm not the type of person who's like, you know, the stuff we were talking about in Jim Austin's article. And like there was that article that you wrote years ago about the Shaq T Stone stuff. I've just never been drawn to that stuff because with audio, it is an avenue to my music. It is a means to an end. It gets my music into my ears. End of story. For some reason, vinyl is unlocking a desire to tinker, to play with it, to hands on this hobby. And it's just sort of resulting in me doing a lot of DIY stuff, like coming up with my own solutions to what I'm imagining are problems that everybody who's ever owned a vinyl collection has. So
also, I can see your records here in the photo. Oh, nice. Blues Traveler. Nice. And the Eagles' greatest hits.
Hey, excellent choice. What's wrong with you? That's either slander or libel, and I can't remember which, but somebody's going to write in and let me know.
All right.
Eagles' greatest hits. Anyway, you were mentioning something like you were saying that there was something in here that was like, hey, I never thought of that. What was that thing?
But that was the polisher thing for your dust cover.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I've always, because those dust covers just suck.
Oh, they're horrible.
Like, I mean, I review a lot of stuff for Wirecutter, and I mean, and I try to keep everything pristine because, you know, we may have to photograph it. And it's just impossible. It's just absolutely impossible. And now that I know about this, I'm going to probably get one of these things and just have it on hand and like expense it or something just so we can clean some of these things up for photography, because you just can't avoid the scratches. But I see this, you know, you can, from the photos you took, you can see the side of the dust cover, which of course doesn't really get scratched that much.
Right.
And it still looks new. And you see the top, and the top, it's like, it's not perfect, but at least the big scratches are out of it. It doesn't look crappy.
Yeah.
It looks fine. But, you know, it's just kind of a shame that someone doesn't come up with like...
it looks brand new now because I've gone through and polished that final polish step. So it looks like the day I took it out of the box. But
it is kind of a shame that someone hasn't come up with a better solution for this.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be. Maybe a doily kind of thing that covers your dust cover.
Yeah.
You know, has some kind of, you know, audiophile significant, you know, design. Maybe you could knit something.
I even said that in the article.
That's your solution.
I got some rainbow colored yarn. I'm thinking like just trying to do like a tie-dyed looking doily for the top of my dust cover. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you don't buy the official Grateful Dead turntable, but you have something that's Grateful Dead adjacent.
Oh, what's funny is I don't collect Grateful Dead records, so I have no interest in Grateful Dead.
Well, there aren't that many. It's really a tape band, right? Isn't it a tape band?
Well, I mean, a lot of this stuff comes out on CD, you know, and I'm fine with.
But they were converted from tapes.
Well, yes, reel to reel, but yeah. I'm not into their albums though, so I have no interest in vinyl. But yeah, the whole tie-dye thing, that'd be kind of cool looking. It would be, you know, Grateful Dead-esque. So yeah, I might do that. Yeah. Have you ever done any sort of your own DIY solutions for, you know, LP problems?
Yes. There was a thing they used to make. Maybe they still make it, called the Townsend Seismic Sync, which I found out about because Mark Levinson recommended it to me. And he had these things that were like these heavy metal platters with bladders in the middle, like a big heavy metal platter on top and one under it with a bladder in the middle. And there was an air pump that would keep them at this perfect pressure or whatever. But then he told me, there's this Townsend seismic sink thing that basically you can just pump it up manually. And it really is an excellent isolation platter. But then, somehow in the transition from magazine to magazine, I lost track of it. And I did actually build my own, and it was a box that was like, turntable size box, wooden box. Mm-hmm. And it had a lid. And the lid was just a little bit smaller than the box. So the lid could move around slightly, and I filled it with sand. Oh. And you put the lid on top of it. And it's excellent isolation. It's really, really good because sand is, dead. Yeah. And you run the risk of potential mess of getting sand all over the place if you spill it. Stuff like that. Yeah. Or even if a strong breeze blows against it or if you knock it or something. But I'm trying to think what else I did. I guess that's about it. I think my other turntable tweak was like years ago, I took a Dremel motor tool to a cartridge once and tried to kind of like modify it and turn it into a nude cartridge or something. And
whoa, wait, why?
I completely screwed the whole thing up because supposedly if you remove the plastic enclosure around the cartridge, it makes it better. Like Sumiko sells like a so-called nude version of at least one of their cartridges.
Interesting.
And like the Blue Point Oyster or whatever it's called. And supposedly it makes it better. I don't know. I mean, I've a lot of that stuff I haven't done that stuff in a long time. Yeah, once I left Sound and Vision, I quit reviewing turntables. And because I really didn't like it. It was, my hands are really big and kind of not all that graceful. Yeah. And so, to test turntables correctly, the way I like to do it, and I like to have an A/B test. So I like to put the same cartridge on both turntables because, you get rid of one variable. Mm-hmm. And try the, like A/B the turntables, preferably blind, with the same record. And it was just too hard. It was just, I kept breaking the lead wires and things like that. And, so I kind of got, I'm not as big of a vinyl enthusiast as I used to be. I just do it, I do it because I get a kick out of playing a record once in a while. And of course I review record players for Wirecutter. It's turntables with built-in speakers. Yeah. Which is, for the most part, not a high-end thing. I mean, there's like one from Andover Audio that's like $2,000. I'm sure is really good. Whoa! But most of them are like $200 or $100 or $60, and the $200 ones are actually kind of okay. Yeah, I think it's Angel's Horn is our top pick on Angel's Horn HO19 on Wirecutter right now, and it's probably $220, and it's got two-way speakers in it, and they sound okay, and it's made from MDF, so the box is fairly solid, doesn't vibrate or anything like that. And the speakers don't have enough power to really disrupt the turntable. It's kind of like a Bluetooth speaker, like a decent Bluetooth speaker married to a turntable. So I'm still testing those things and still kind of messing around with it. But, I'm drifting more into the world of CD, which is something I think we'll discuss in a future episode. But anyway, so we should probably segue into our death spiral here, where we close out the show, and then we go and we play Clunky, and then we talk about the credits, and then we go to our Patreon segment for our Patreon subscribers.
Let's do that.
It's not a death spiral. It's more like a celebration of, we're transitioning from one form into another, from one plane into another.
It's a celebration of the life of this episode. How about that?
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
It's like something Wookiees or Ewoks would do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my red robe is at the dry cleaners, so we can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, we have a new piece of music which is in the works, thanks to you. There's some drum beats which I'm going to articulate with something.
Very cool.
I think I have it in my head what I'm going to do. So there'll be a new piece of music and some old one.
Excellent.
Both by some combination of us.
Yeah. Yeah. You're editing this one, mixing and mastering and all of that stuff.
I am.
So you get to pick the other tune.
Yeah.
You've got all the control. You've got all the power. So, yeah, this is a Butterburger production of both of us.
Indeed.
Anything else? Any other credits we got to do?
I think we're good. We don't have anybody to thank for this episode, except for, as usual, anybody who listens to this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you know what? We should do a little bit of what was it called? Housekeeping. It's been a while since anybody left us a review on iTunes. I don't know why iTunes is the most important place to leave a review, but that can really, really help you reach a larger audience if people leave you reviews on iTunes. So if you're listening to us on an Apple platform, go leave us a review, put some stars on it, let people know.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I guess that's it for this episode for most people, but patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Yes. Transitioning to a different plane now.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah. And so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.